Imagine this. Right now, someone steps into your life, places a crown in your hands, and looks into your eyes, saying, "You were meant to lead. Not tomorrow. Not when everything is perfect. Not when you feel ready. Now. Today. This very moment." Most students believe leadership is for someone older, richer, smarter, or more confident. But that is not true. Leadership begins in the heart. Leadership begins with a single decision. Leadership begins when you look at your life and quietly say, "I am responsible for what I become." This is the moment that separates ordinary students from extraordinary ones. In this story, you will learn what it truly means to lead like a king. Even if you are just a student, even if you feel unsure, even if you have doubts about yourself. Kings are not born powerful, brave, or wise. They become powerful. They become brave. They become wise. And so can you. Chapter 1: The King with No Crown. A long time ago, not in a faraway kingdom filled with castles and warriors, but in a simple home where many students live exactly like you, there lived a boy named Michael. Michael was not special in the way people usually describe special. He was not the top student who always received the highest marks. He was not the most confident student who raised his hand first. He was not the most popular boy who filled the room with laughter. In fact, Michael often felt invisible, like a shadow in his own classroom. When teachers asked questions, he immediately looked down, hoping they would not call his name. When people around him talked loudly, he stayed quiet, afraid his voice would be ignored. When challenges came, he stepped backward, believing he wasn't strong enough. When life became difficult, he felt small, almost powerless. But deep inside Michael's heart, even though he didn't know it, lived a sleeping king. A king waiting for the right moment to wake up. One day, something unexpected happened. His teacher, a calm, wise man who observed his students carefully, looked at Michael for a long moment. Then he said something Michael never forgot. "You walk like a prince who hasn't discovered his crown." Michael laughed nervously because the words felt too big for him. "Me? A prince?" he asked quietly. "I can't even speak confidently." But the teacher did not laugh. He simply smiled, and with a gentle voice he said, "Leadership is not about speaking loudly. Leadership is about controlling your own world before you try to control anything else." Those words entered Michael's heart like a small spark of light. For days, he could not stop thinking about them. Could it be possible that he had something inside him that even he could not see? Could he really have a crown he had not discovered? He did not know the answer, but he knew the words had awakened something in him. And then, later that week, something small happened. A moment so simple that most people would ignore it. But sometimes, the smallest moment is enough to wake the sleeping king inside you, to remind you that ordinary students can become extraordinary leaders if they dare to look within. And in that moment, something inside Michael began to open, like a door that had been locked for too long. Chapter 2: The Moment of Decision. Michael was sitting alone in his room, staring at his books, but feeling completely lost. His grades were dropping no matter how hard he tried to focus. His confidence was sinking lower each day, making even simple tasks feel heavy. His future, which once felt bright and full of possibilities, now looked blurry and distant. He wanted change. He desperately wanted to feel strong again, motivated again, hopeful again. But he didn't know how to start. The world felt too big, and he felt too small. But in that quiet moment of frustration, a memory returned to him. The calm voice of his teacher saying, "Control your world first. That is where leadership begins." The words echoed in his mind, not loudly, but clearly, like a reminder he could no longer ignore. At that moment, something inside Michael shifted. He did not stand up with dramatic music playing in the background. He did not shout a powerful speech. He did not post a motivational message on social media. Instead, he made a decision. A quiet, private, deeply personal decision that only he heard. He whispered to himself, "From today, I will be responsible for myself." It was a small sentence, but it carried the weight of a new beginning. That simple whisper was the birth of his inner king, the king who had been sleeping inside him for years. Because before a king can lead others, before he can inspire, guide, or motivate anyone else, he must first learn to lead himself. That night, Michael took a step that seemed small from the outside but felt powerful inside. He cleaned his desk thoroughly, removing the dust and chaos that kept his mind restless. He arranged his books neatly, giving his space a sense of order. He wrote down clear goals on a piece of paper. Not big dreams, but practical steps he could follow. And as he did these simple tasks, something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt a sense of control. Not control over the world, not control over people, not control over the future, but control over his own mind, his own decisions, and his own direction. It was a gentle feeling, but it was strong. Leadership, he finally understood, does not begin with big actions or loud voices. It begins with taking responsibility for yourself. It begins in the quiet moments. It begins in the mind. And that night, Michael took his first step toward becoming the king of his own life. Chapter 3. The King's First Law. Rule your mind. A kingdom is only as strong as the mind of its king. If the king is weak, the kingdom collapses under pressure. If the king is confused, the kingdom wanders without purpose. If the king is angry, the kingdom burns with chaos. Students are no different. Your mind is your private kingdom, and whatever rules your mind eventually rules your life. If your mind is messy, your life becomes messy. If your thoughts are negative, your actions slowly become negative. If your beliefs are small, your results become small too. Michael understood this truth slowly, not in one sudden realization, but through small moments of awareness that built up over time. He began to see that everything he did, the way he studied, the way he reacted, the way he treated himself, all came from what he allowed to grow inside his mind. So every morning, before he began his day, Michael forced himself to think one strong, steady thought. I will act like a king today. To him, a king did not panic when things went wrong. A king did not run away when challenges came. A king did not complain when situations got hard. A king solved problems. A king stood tall even in difficulty. A king made decisions instead of waiting for others to decide for him. This became Michael's new mental rule, his first law of leadership. Rule your mind before your mind rules you. He trained his mind the way a warrior trains his sword, with discipline, patience, and repetition. He stopped feeding his thoughts the weak sentences that had controlled him for years. He no longer allowed himself to say, I can't, or it's too hard, or I'm not smart enough. He realized these sentences were not facts. They were chains. So he replaced them with stronger thoughts. He began saying, "I will try," even when he felt nervous. He began saying, "I will learn," even when he made mistakes. He began saying, "I will grow," even when progress felt slow. Each time he chose a stronger thought, his inner king grew a little more awake. And slowly, silently, but powerfully, his life began to shift. He did not become perfect. He did not become fearless. He did not suddenly become the top student, but he became better, day by day, decision by decision, thought by thought. That is how every great king begins, not with a crown, not with applause, not with power, but with mastery over his own mind. When you learn to rule your thoughts, you learn to rule your life. Chapter 4. The King's Second Law. Build discipline as your castle. Kings do not depend on motivation. Kings depend on discipline. Motivation is like a fire. Bright, exciting, powerful, but temporary. It can burn strongly today and disappear completely tomorrow. But discipline is like a brick. Solid, steady, dependable. One brick alone does not build a kingdom, but brick after brick, day after day, you eventually build a castle that can protect you for life. Michael understood this truth only after struggling with inconsistency for a long time. There were days when he felt full of energy and promised himself he would study for hours. But the next day, that energy faded, and he could not repeat the same effort. He realized that success was not about doing something big once, it was about doing something small every day. Success was not about intensity, it was about consistency. So he stopped waiting to feel motivated and started building small, steady habits that became the foundation of his new life. He studied for just 30 minutes every day, even on days when he felt tired. He read 10 pages every night, no matter how slow or fast he read. He practiced English for 15 minutes daily, improving little by little without pressure. He wrote down his plans before sleeping, organizing his mind before the next day began. And he woke up just 20 minutes earlier, giving himself a quiet head start each morning. These habits were not huge. They were not dramatic. They were not exciting in the way people imagine success to be. But they were bricks of discipline that slowly formed the walls of his future. Every brick mattered. Every small action mattered. Every day mattered. Discipline began shaping his life quietly but powerfully. He didn't suddenly become a different person. He simply became a more consistent version of himself. And as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, he could feel the castle of his discipline growing taller and stronger around him. His focus improved. His confidence grew. His mind became clearer. His days became more organized. These changes did not come from big promises or high motivation. They came from small habits repeated with discipline. That is how a king rises, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, patiently, with discipline as his castle. When you build discipline into your life, you create a structure that protects your dreams, supports your growth, and carries you through the moments when motivation disappears. And like Michael, you too can build a castle strong enough to carry you toward any future you choose. Chapter 5. The King's Third Law. Lead with courage, not with fear. A king without courage is not truly a king. He is only a frightened child wearing a crown too heavy for his heart. Courage is the breath of leadership, the fire that keeps a kingdom alive. Michael had fears just like any student, fears that tightened his chest and silenced his voice. He feared failure because he didn't want to disappoint anyone. He feared speaking because he thought his words would sound weak. He feared being judged because he believed others were better. He feared trying because trying meant risking embarrassment. And most of all, he feared being wrong, because mistakes felt like proof that he wasn't good enough. These fears built invisible walls around him, trapping his inner king behind them. One ordinary day in class, the teacher asked a question. It wasn't a difficult question. It wasn't complicated. Michael knew the answer. Not guessed, not hoped, but truly knew it. Yet fear grabbed him by the shoulders and froze him in place. His heart beat faster, his throat tightened, and his mind whispered, "Stay quiet." But at that exact moment, another voice rose inside him, his inner king, the part of him that had slowly been waking up. That voice said quietly but firmly, "You cannot lead if you cannot speak." The words struck him deeply. They felt like a challenge, like destiny knocking softly on his mind. So, for the first time in his life, Michael did something he had never dared to do. He raised his hand. His arm felt heavy, his voice trembled, and he could hear his heartbeat in his ears. When he finally spoke, the sentence was not perfect. He made small mistakes. His voice cracked. He felt exposed, vulnerable, nervous, but he spoke anyway. And in that moment, something incredible happened. Not outside him, but inside. He realized that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to act even when fear screams the loudest. Courage is choosing action over comfort, growth over safety, progress over perfection. Michael did not become fearless that day. Fear did not magically disappear, but he changed. He learned that every time he chooses courage, even in the smallest moments, his inner crown shines a little brighter. He finally understood that great leaders are not people who are never afraid. They are people who walk forward anyway. And from that day on, even when fear whispered to him, Michael knew he had the strength to rise above it, one courageous choice at a time. Chapter 6. The King's Fourth Law. Protect your energy like a treasure. A wise king understands one timeless truth. A kingdom is not destroyed by enemies alone. It collapses when the king wastes his own strength. The same is true for students. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or intelligence. They fail because their energy is scattered, drained, misused, and thrown away on things that do not help them grow. Michael once lived like that. He would open his books, but end up scrolling for hours. He would plan to study, but waste half the day comparing himself with others. He would promise himself to focus, yet spend his time gossiping, complaining, worrying, and reacting to every small distraction. His mind was always busy, but his life was not moving forward. One evening, after a long, unproductive day, he sat quietly and asked himself, "If I want to lead like a king, why am I acting like a servant to my distractions?" That question changed everything. He began to realize that energy is not unlimited. Every thought, every reaction, every choice either strengthens you or weakens you. And if he wanted to rise, he needed to protect his energy the same way a king protects his treasure. So Michael changed his approach. He stopped entering pointless arguments, no matter how tempting they were. He stopped allowing negative people to drain his confidence. He stopped letting drama pull him into battles that had nothing to do with his goals. When friends gossiped about others, he stayed silent. When something irritated him, he chose calm instead of conflict. When distractions tried to steal his attention, he simply said no, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly, like a king who knows his priorities. Little by little, something amazing happened. His mind felt lighter, his thoughts became clearer. He woke up with more energy and went to sleep with fewer regrets. He felt stronger not because life was easier, but because he was no longer wasting his strength on things that did not matter. He understood a powerful truth. Focus is a form of power, and guarding your attention is a form of leadership. A king builds his kingdom by choosing his battles wisely. Michael learned to spend his energy on studying, improving, practicing English, building skills, and shaping his future. Not on negative conversations, unnecessary scrolling, or emotional chaos. When he protected his energy, his confidence grew, his discipline strengthened, and his life started moving forward with real speed. That is the fourth law of a king. Protect your energy like a treasure, because when your energy rises, your whole life rises with it. Chapter 7. The King's Fifth Law. Serve others without expecting anything. A true king is not defined by the gold on his head, the throne he sits on, or the power he holds. A true king is defined by the quiet acts of service he offers to others. Leadership does not begin with authority. It begins with kindness. Michael learned this truth slowly, not through books, but through his own experiences. He noticed that the people he admired most were not the loudest, the strongest, or the most talented. They were the ones who helped others without showing off, without expecting anything, and without needing applause. They served because their heart was noble, not because their ego needed attention. Inspired by this, Michael began serving in small, simple ways. When a classmate struggled to understand a lesson, he stayed back a few minutes to explain it patiently. When someone missed a class, he shared his notes so they wouldn't fall behind. He encouraged his friends when they doubted themselves during exams. He helped juniors who were shy or scared, guiding them the way he wished someone had guided him. He never announced it. He never posted it. He never told anyone he was helping. He did it quietly, sincerely, and respectfully, like a king who knows that service is the foundation of leadership. At first, he didn't notice any change. No one praised him, no one celebrated him, and no one said he was amazing. But Michael wasn't helping for those reasons anyway. He kept serving because it felt right. And slowly, something magical began to happen. People started trusting him. They came to him for advice, not because he was perfect, but because they felt safe with him. They respected him, not because he demanded respect, but because he earned it through his actions. People began following his example, studying harder, helping each other, becoming more supportive, simply because they saw him living those values. Michael realized a powerful truth. When you help others rise, you rise too. A king understands that leadership is not about standing above others. It is about lifting others with your words, your time, your effort, and your heart. Serving others grew his character. It deepened his empathy. It strengthened his confidence. And it made him someone others looked up to naturally, without force, without pride, and without ego. This is the fifth law of a king. Serve without expecting anything. Because those who serve with sincerity become leaders with honor. And in the end, the world follows not those who shine the brightest, but those who make others shine. Chapter 8. The King's Sixth Law. Stand strong when life tests you. Every kingdom, no matter how powerful, must face storms. And every king, no matter how wise, must walk through seasons of darkness where nothing feels easy, nothing feels clear, and nothing feels possible. Life tests those who wish to rise, and Michael was no exception. After weeks of discipline, progress, and confidence, he suddenly found himself collapsing under pressure. His exams were coming closer. His schedule became tighter. His energy dropped. One morning, he woke up feeling completely drained. Mentally, physically, emotionally. The fire inside him felt weaker than before. His thoughts became heavy, and even simple tasks felt impossible. He sat at his desk, staring at his books, feeling the same old fear he thought he had defeated. His confidence fell like a stone. His routine, which he had built so carefully, began to fall apart. He missed a study session. Then, two. His room became messy again. His focus broke. His mind felt cloudy, restless, and overwhelmed. For a moment, he felt like all his effort had been wasted. A dangerous thought came to him, the thought every student faces at least once. Maybe I should just quit. But then, somewhere deep inside him, a stronger voice rose. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was steady, calm, and powerful. The voice of his inner king. And that voice whispered, "This is the test that makes the king." Michael realized that easy days never test your strength, your character, or your commitment. Only difficult days do. Only storms reveal how strong your foundation truly is. Only challenges show whether you lead yourself or whether your emotions lead you. So he stood up. He took a deep breath and began rebuilding from where he left off. He cleaned his desk again, not for perfection, but for clarity. He opened his books again, not for grades, but for growth. He repeated his goals out loud, not to impress anyone, but to remind himself of who he wanted to become. He looked in the mirror and told himself, "Kings are not made in comfort. Kings are made in storms." Slowly, his strength returned. Slowly, his focus sharpened. Slowly, the heavy feeling turned into determination. Michael learned something life-changing that day. Greatness is not built on days when everything is easy. Greatness is built on days when you feel like giving up, but choose not to. That is how kings rise. That is how true leaders are made. And that is how ordinary students begin their transformation into extraordinary individuals. Chapter 9. The King Who Finally Saw His Crown. The day of the exam finally arrived, and Michael felt something he had never felt before. Calm confidence. It was not arrogance, and it was not fear. It was a quiet, steady strength that came from months of preparation, discipline, and self-leadership. As he walked into the examination hall, he held his head high, not to show off, but because he had learned to stand like a king, with dignity, patience, and composure. Sitting at his desk, he felt a strange sense of control. He opened his exam paper and began writing, each answer guided by clarity, each thought measured by discipline. The nervousness that had once frozen him was now just a faint whisper, easily managed by the strong habits he had built over time. He approached each question with courage, knowing that he had done the work, prepared his mind, and trained his heart. As he completed the exam, Michael felt a quiet satisfaction. It was not about perfection or competition. It was about doing his best, giving his full effort, and standing true to himself. And when the results were announced, something remarkable happened. For the first time in his life, Michael ranked among the top students in his class. But even as the news spread, he realized that the rank, the recognition, and the applause were not the real victory. The true victory was deeper and more personal. It was the transformation he had undergone to become the person he was today. He had become the king his teacher had seen in him long ago, not a king of a kingdom with subjects and gold, but a king of himself, capable of ruling his own mind, actions, and destiny. Michael looked back at the journey he had traveled. His habits were strong. He studied consistently, woke up early, and built his discipline brick by brick. His mind was focused, no longer distracted by negativity or fear. His confidence was steady, growing quietly through daily practice and small victories. His courage was alive, tested and strengthened in countless moments where he had acted despite fear. His energy was protected, carefully guarded from distractions, drama, and unnecessary battles. And most importantly, his character was growing, honest, kind, disciplined, and resilient. He did not need a physical crown or external approval. The crown he had been seeking had been within him all along, shaped by his choices, his courage, and his consistent effort. That day, Michael understood a powerful truth. A true king is not made by a title, by recognition, or by temporary achievements. A true king is made by the transformation of his own mind, heart, and actions. And in that moment, Michael realized that his life itself had become the crown. A crown built not of gold, but of strength, wisdom, and integrity. Chapter 10. How you can lead like a king. My dear students, now it is your turn. All this time you have read about Michael, his journey, and the way he discovered the king inside himself. But the story is not complete until you step into it. Right now, you may feel small. You may feel lost. You may feel unsure of your abilities, your future, or even your place in this world. These feelings are natural. Every great leader, every king or queen, has felt the same at some point. The difference between those who rise and those who remain ordinary is simple. The ones who rise choose to awaken the king or queen within themselves, despite fear, doubt, or uncertainty. Inside you lies that same power, waiting patiently for you to recognize it, waiting for you to make the decision to lead your life with strength, discipline, and purpose. Here is how you begin. First, lead your mind. Your thoughts are the foundation of everything you do. If your mind is weak, distracted, or negative, your life will reflect that. Think strong thoughts. Think positive thoughts. Think with purpose. Feed your mind with ideas that grow you, motivate you, and guide you forward. Second, lead your habits. Greatness is not built in a single day or through rare bursts of effort. It is built quietly, consistently, through small daily actions. Reading a few pages, practicing a skill, studying with focus. These small habits are the bricks of your future. Over time, they create a strong, lasting foundation. Third, lead with courage. Life will test you. Fear will whisper that you are not ready, that you will fail, or that you should stop. But a leader acts in spite of fear, chooses effort over comfort, and faces challenges head-on. Courage transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary results. Fourth, lead your energy. Every moment and every thought is a choice of where your energy goes. Protect it carefully. Avoid unnecessary distractions, negative people, and trivial battles. Focus your energy on the things that build you, your goals, and your future. Fifth, lead by serving others. True leadership is not about power, authority, or being first. It is about helping others, lifting those around you, and using your strength to make a positive impact. Kindness, support, and guidance are marks of a strong leader. And finally, lead yourself first. You cannot guide others if you cannot guide yourself. Discipline your mind, your habits, your actions, and your choices. Be responsible for the person you are becoming each day. If you commit to these principles, you will rise. You will rise like Michael. You will rise like all great leaders who have walked before you. You will rise like a king. Not because someone places a crown on your head, but because you have earned it within yourself through courage, discipline, service, and self-mastery. Your journey begins now. Final words. Your crown is waiting. My dear students, leadership is not a position. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is not a crown that someone places on your head. True leadership is a way of living. It is reflected in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you act, the way you think, the way you treat others, and the way you treat yourself. Even if you are quiet, you can lead. Even if you are shy, you can lead. Even if you are struggling, you can lead. Even if you are not perfect, you can lead. Leadership is not about perfection. It is about responsibility. It is about understanding that every day, every moment, every choice you make is building your kingdom, the kingdom of your life. As you continue this journey, remember the lessons we have learned together. At English Achieve Students Hub, we believe that greatness is not about being the loudest or the most popular. It is about being disciplined, courageous, kind, and responsible. It is about making small choices consistently that strengthen your mind, your habits, your courage, and your character. Every decision you make is a brick in the castle of your future. Every action, no matter how small, is a step closer to the leader you are meant to become. So rise, stand tall, walk with purpose, grow with discipline, act with courage, think like a leader, live like a leader, lead like a king. Your crown may not be on your head yet, but it is already in your heart, quietly waiting for you to claim it. One day, when you look back on your journey, you will realize the truth. You did not wait for someone to make you a leader. You became the leader you were always meant to be. And in that moment, you will say with pride and joy, "Yes, I became the leader I was always meant to be."